Shalom. Welcome again to Seekers of Meaning, the podcast here arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. We invite you to, if you have a comment or a question or a suggestion about these podcasts, please feel free to email me at Rabbi Address at jewishsacredaging.com. Go visit the Facebook page. Check out the website, conveniently named jewishsacredaging.com. And we very, very much appreciative of your support and your time. It is with a great deal of pleasure that we welcome to today's podcast Rabbi Judith Edelman-Green, coming to us from right down the street in beautiful Israel. And she is a spiritual care expert, chaplain, and author of a just published in July book called The Well of Compassion, The Art of Spiritual Care. Judith, welcome to Seekers of Meaning. I hope you're well and safe, and it's very lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for hosting me.
Let's get the technical stuff out of the way. The Well of Compassion, published in July. Somebody, after hearing you and engaging in the podcast, wants to get a hold of it. How does one do that?
It's on Amazon. It's also on Ingram Spark. Or if you're in Israel, then you can turn to me.
Okay. Very good. It's a very lovely book. It's intense. It's not a beach read, but it is a very, very intense and pointed. It's very meaty. You're going to get a lot out of it. I always am interested to know when people sit down and write a book, which is a very intensely personal book, because obviously a lot of this emerged out of your own professional life.
Yes.
What was the motivation for this? Were you just inspired by somebody? Was it an accumulation of things? I have so much, I just want to get this out. What was the motivation for the book?
I think it was the inspirational meetings that I've had over the years with the elderly in retirement homes, with my patients at Tel HaShomer Hospital over many years, and the people who come to me. I also support rabbis. The intimate meeting, soul to soul, face to face, heart to heart, and to get to know the most important and difficult issues that people face in life, and to share that amazing space as if we're around a well and we're sharing a drink of water in the desert. We're sharing something very sacred. And I find it tremendously inspirational. So I knew that part of the book was going to be stories about how people cope with impossible situations and what resources they use in order to cope.
Did you find one significant theme that most people turn to or wound up commenting to you as they face these challenges? Or
No, and that's why the book has 7 gates. There's not one theme. It's very varied. I bring a lot of life situations. So maybe I'll tell you about the gates in the book.
The gates, because there are 7 gates within divisions of the book.
So a lot of very beautiful people helped me along the way. There was a lot of synchronicity. A woman called me up and said, "I'd like to interview you about Jewish special needs." Turns out she's an amazing illustrator, artist, Judy Livingston. She did the art in the book. She did the front cover. And I'd like to show you her gates. I came up with the idea of the gates, again, through collaboration with my spiritual caregiver, Rabbi Emma Shamba Ayalon. The first gate is, what is spirituality? People have trouble defining spirituality. This is the only one with writing. And the illustrator, Judy Livingston, did a series of mandalas, and you see connectedness, Ein Sof, never-ending connections. We're all one. And this is a modern Shiviti. There are ancient Shivitis, which is staring at the 4-letter tetragram of God, and therefore feeling that God is opposite me at all times. God is balancing me at all times. Shiviti means to balance. So I go into balance in life. Every gate has many chapters that explore. Can't answer quickly what is spirituality, but through many chapters, I deal with everything from the dictionary definition to looking for balance in life. I think it's one of those elusive things that we never find, but we always look for. And it helps us along the way. And then the second gate is the senses. Now, why did I write about the senses in a book about spiritual care? I worked with children with special needs for 25 years, running a program, bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah for the special child. And I learned from these children and was inspired that seeing is not through the eyes and hearing is not through the ears. It's all through the heart. And I read the Bible that way. Like when Abraham sees the Mount of Moriah from afar, and then he raises his eyes and sees the Ayil, the ram, from close up. What is seeing? Seeing is also attunement, awareness. And then what happens when the senses have a confluence and we see the voices at Mount Sinai? You see something you can't see. So I have a whole gate on the senses and I write about every sense. And I made some senses up, like the confluence of seeing and hearing or lifting one's voice.
So with these gates, you cover this wide range of approaches under the general rubric, let's say, of spirituality, which is very personal.
Yes.
But getting back to that initial motivation in the introduction, you mentioned October 7th, and we can't not relate to that because you say it right up front. I was writing this book, finishing this book. All of a sudden, October 7th came and whacked everything like. So talk to me about the impact of that day on the development of this book.
I think it's important that you're asking that, and I'm sure the listeners will want to know that as well, because it was an earthquake in all of our lives, wherever we live. Here I am writing a book about the meaning of life, about how to support people in trouble, how to support people who are facing perhaps death through blood cancer, COVID, and our worlds were upended on October 7th. So I wanted to know, did my book stand up to the challenge of that? For those of us in Israel, it meant running to bomb shelters. It meant seeing close people to us be called up to reserves. Our children and grandchildren dealt with sirens, bombing, big booms, having to go into either a sealed special room or down to a shelter, which means running as fast as you can, or down the street to a public shelter, not being able to drive because you don't know if you'll get there in time, and not being able to go safely to work, not being able to go safely shopping, and worrying about what's happening to our country, to our government, to our souls, to the people who are being hurt on the other side. It's so painful. So I think it made the book deeper because I had to deal with a whole new kind of trauma. And it reminded me to use all the tools that I'd been working on: prayer, study, community, spiritual exercises, gratitude, to use these tools that I'm suggesting when in trouble. And we've been in trouble for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. That's why I think it's important when people read the book that they understand, because you say it, that the October 7th and the subsequent development, it hovers over the book and perhaps makes what you're saying and what you're writing even more important.
I think so. And it's not a political book.
No, it's not a political.
But I bring that maybe just a drop more of compassion in this world, everywhere, across borders and to each other and to ourselves. Maybe that's what's needed.
Yeah.
And that's what spurred me to get the book out now.
So the major metaphor that you write about, the well of compassion, anybody who's dabbled in Torah study, especially now coming up after Yontif with the book of Genesis, understands that the well is a very, very important symbolic aspect of our literature, our sacred literature. So walk me through your understanding of the well, and in moments of crisis, how deep into our own well do we have to go?
The very last thing I came up with was the name of the book. It didn't have a name while it was being written. I sent it to Estelle Frankel, who wrote Sacred Therapy.
Right. And you talk about her major mentor.
Yes. And among many. And she said, "You have written about wells," which was extremely helpful for someone to tell you what you've written about. And I realized that that compassion is what I want to advocate. So I have a chapter early on in the book, I think in spirituality, called Radical Kindness. And I tell the story of Rebecca at the well, and Abraham sends his servant to look for a wife for Isaac. And he's met by a young woman who runs towards him and offers him water from the well. He's tired, he's hot, he's thirsty. It's the desert. Water is everything. But she goes beyond greeting a stranger and welcoming a stranger and brings water to his camels. Well, think of a camel and how much they must drink and how much water she must have had to bring. And that's why I call it radical kindness. I think the act of going way beyond. So in the Bible, wells are a meeting place. They're a place of giving. They're a place of sharing. They're a place of solving problems. And they're actually a place of love stories. Great love stories take place around wells. Intergenerational. Isaac redigs the wells that his father. It's about renewal. It's about finding meaning in every generation. And it's a metaphor for spiritual care or pastoral care or chaplaincy or any act of human kindness, of going beyond and trying to figure out what is the spiritual water that any patient or person needs. What is it they need? Do they need to talk? Usually that's what they need. Do they need to be heard? Do they need to be seen with non-judgment? Do they need to be part of a community? Because wells are communal. And these illustrations are also, in a sense, they're wells because they're round, circular, and deep. And I think wells can be about our own personal resources that we use to refill our resources when we're in terrible times of trouble.
The image of the well and water, when I teach this, we always talk about this is also symbolic of personal transition, which is why I'm fascinated by the title and the use of the well. Because in all those scenarios that you mention, and there are more, something different is going to happen as a result of the meeting at the well. There's a transition.
Absolutely.
It's like in Hollywood when the old Hollywood, maybe some of the new ones, except they're all like end of the world movies. When they cut to water or thunderstorm or rain, I always thought that that's a cinematic symbol of something's transitioning in the story. There's a major change in this story. And water changes. I mean, from your own experience, water is a change motif. Everything from the mikveh to just even washing your hands after the funeral or washing your hands, before you eat and you say the bracha. There's something changing. There's something different.
Yes.
So that's why I wanted to explore that idea, that metaphor with you about the well, because I think it's fascinating. I'm glad you decided the title because I think it's a symbol that we don't talk about and teach enough and that people can understand. People can understand it.
And I think people need accompaniment when they're going through a life transition. A professional ear.
Well, isn't that part of the role of community?
Yes.
Somebody or some people you can talk to and be supportive.
Yes.
Without saying, oh, you're doing it, you're wrong, you're right. I need to just talk.
Absolutely.
You write about tools for spiritual accompaniment. Speaking of accompaniment, nice segue. Ruach, mystery, presence, humor. Talk to me about that, especially the role of humor.
Okay. I have a chapter about clowning in hospitals. And I say at the beginning of the chapter that it's one of the most serious, solemn chapters in the book. Or as Freud said, humor is very serious indeed.
Yes.
I'd say a general rule when using humor in pastoral or spiritual care is let the person who's sharing, who's talking, set the tone. It's not about us being funny or laughing. It's about the other person. If they're joking, if they're playful, you can join in exactly in the way they are. So a patient of mine in the book who is in many chapters, her story develops throughout the book. Her name is Maim, water. It's a pseudonym, but I thought that was appropriate to call her Maim. She told us two funny stories. One is her grandchildren said to her, "I don't want you going to that doctor who took your hair away." And so we laughed about her bald head. And what she was really doing was facing death. But she did it in a light way. And another way she faced death is she said, "My mother gets so many brownie points for the seriousness of my illness. She can boast to all her friends that her daughter is more sick than their daughters." And, and we laughed about her mother needing a good tragedy to talk about. That enabled her to actually confront and face death, or the process leading to it anyway.
You're a chaplain, a spiritual caregiver, etc. You worked in a hospital situation. This may be a little bit more unique in certain cases to Israel. No doubt in your work, you're confronting Christians, Muslims, people from all different varieties and backgrounds, politically, theologically, spiritually. And you're walking in there as a rabbi with your kippah, given the realities of the Middle East. What have you found? Is there a common denominator? Have you met with hostility? Have you met with, or it doesn't matter?
Well, that's the absolute single most inspiring aspect of my work. That every day at the hospital, I would see an Arab doctor or nurse taking care of an ultra-Orthodox Jew, and the other way around. The different spiritual needs of my patients, and I tell stories about Christians, Muslims, Jews, ultra-Orthodox, secular Israelis. It's amazing. So because I grew up in America and lived in America, if I had an Arab Christian patient and it was Christmas and the person was in terrible spiritual agony, I could recall Silent Night and play it for them on my cell phone and sing it with them and say, what word in the song is speaking to you right now? Or I could play the Beatles' Let It Be, Mother Mary Comes to You, and ask them about Mother Mary and what she means to them. I accompanied a beautiful Druze man who was dying. He was the principal of a school in Israel. He was a very educated man. He understood Jewish sources, so I could use some Jewish sources. But when he was dying, I took him on a guided meditation to the sky where he could see Allah. And it meant such a lot to him. It was just things he had told me about his belief and his needs. Sometimes there was a language barrier, in which case I'd use a translator. We also had medical tourism, so I'd get Catholics from Rome and
Really?
Hindus from India, but I've been a rabbi in India, so I understood the culture. Now, the one thing in your statement that's not true is that I go in with my kippah. I don't.
Okay.
The Association for Pastoral Care in Israel made a ruling that we're not allowed to tell people that we're rabbis because they're afraid of religious coercion. So I was very sensitive and careful and didn't bring my liberal, open way of being. And I accompanied the ultra-Orthodox many times and really built bridges and meaning there. I can give an example. A very ultra-Orthodox woman was being admitted to the hospital. It was her first day. And she was taken to her room, and I was left with the ultra-Orthodox husband, who normally wouldn't even speak to a woman, never mind a rabbi. And I explained to him that I'm a spiritual caregiver, and he told me that he's a teacher and a rabbi in Bnei Brak. And I said to him, well, then we're in the same profession, and gave him honor for being what he is. And then I said, but it's completely different when it's your wife. And then he opened up completely and told me that he had negative associations with hospitals. And he also used humor. He told me a story about when she's sick, he hurts. When her leg hurts, his leg hurts. And that was our ongoing way of communicating when he was there. And we got very close. The wife, the husband, and myself, and I accompanied them. She did get better.
Good. Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned about the kippah. I would imagine a lot of people here in the States are not aware of that. They're used to the American system. But
it's a difference.
In your experience now in Israel, this concept of the spirit of pastoral care, of chaplaincy, how new is it institutionally in the state of Israel?
It's 25 years old. Actually, it was 25 years old when I started my book, so maybe 30-something years old. It started in Sha'arei Tzedek. It, of course, comes from World War II in the Jewish world and maybe World War I. So it's not necessarily a known thing. The accepted people who do it in hospitals in Israel are the ultra-Orthodox, and they don't have to be trained. But the way I do it is very inclusive. I can speak and listen to anyone, any religion, any spiritual background. I'm not trying to proselytize. I'm not trying to change anyone or judge anyone, but to accept and maybe even love the people that I listen to. Now, if it's really timely and appropriate, I will tell them I'm a rabbi. For instance, I met a convert to Judaism who had been converted by a Reform rabbi and who was having a terrible time adjusting to Israel from America. Well, it was appropriate for me to tell her that I also was ordained as a Reform rabbi. So I did.
Is it true that HUC, our seminary in Jerusalem, has a pastoral counseling chaplaincy track now? Is that true?
I don't know about now, but when I was studying and ordained in 2009, we studied 8 semesters of pastoral care.
That's what I thought.
We were well trained, but then I went on to study CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education, and I'm ordained as a pastoral caregiver.
Judith, how do you understand the word ruach?
Beautiful question. So I'll start with the personal and then I'll go more technical. I have a grandson with special needs, and he is my theological partner. We talk about spiritual things all the time, and he asks me, Savta, who makes the wind blow? And then we have great theological discussions. So that's one answer. I looked it up in the dictionary. It means a puff of wind that lifts you up, uplifting. Ruach, meaning. Your program is called Seekers of Meaning. That's Ruach.
Yeah.
That is Ruach, to seek meaning. We don't necessarily have to have answers. I don't give answers to the people I see, but I might offer them a poem or a song or a text or my listening ear, anything that's right for them. Nature. Whatever is meaningful to that particular person, that's spiritual.
Well, the book, and again, the book is called The Well of Compassion, The Art of Spiritual Care, and now available at the usual suspects of where you get your books, personally or electronically. Towards the end of the book, though, you talk about something called spiritual maturity, and you write about overcoming the idea that life is either good or bad, rather good and bad, which is a nice way to start the conclusion of the book. And before we run out of time, walk me through Judith's understanding of that phrase of spiritual maturity.
It's a euphemism for aging.
Okay.
We're talking about when people mature age-wise, but also spiritually. The comfort of maturing age-wise is maturing and deepening the well of compassion. We might lose our idealism that life is all good and bright and shiny, and we might incorporate that no person is all good either, which helps us because then we can accept we're not perfect, they're not perfect, they're complex. Look at any character in the Bible. No one is painted as all good. They all are on a journey. They're all in a struggle. They have transitions at wells where they get some help. I think it's a very deep understanding that God creates the good and the bad, and the good and the bad are part of people, life, experience, illness. Like people will say in the hospital, I never did anything bad. Why am I sick? They think it's a punishment. I think there's just sickness. There is illness in the world. There are troubles. There is aging. There is death. They're part of life. And I think the more we work on that, we work on the temporary nature of life and understand it like a leaf that falls from a tree or a tree that's impermanent. Everything's impermanent, so therefore it's precious and meaningful.
That's why I'm a big fan of the Shehachiana. You know, you celebrate life.
This moment.
So we're just entering, speaking of gates, the month of Elul. What's your wish, Judith, for the coming year? Down deep in your neshama.
Peace, world peace, understanding, compassion. Let us be kind to each other. Let us be good to each other. Let us listen to each other. Let us stop judging each other.
Thank you very much. Rabbi Judith Edelman-Green, the author of The Well of Compassion, The Art of Spiritual Care, available wherever you get your books, either personally or through the magic of the pushing the button and it comes to you in the middle of the night, whatever. However they do that, I don't understand.
I also have a website.
Which is?
RabbiJudith.life.
.life. RabbiJudith.life. Judith, take care. Stay safe, please. Have a sweet year. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Good luck with the book. Good luck with the book. To all of you, thank you very, very much for joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. Again, I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. Thank you for joining us. Again, check out the website, jewishsacredaging.com. On that website, you'll find a very conveniently located donate button. And if you'd like to support these podcasts and the work of Jewish Sacred Aging, just click on that, follow the prompt. If you or your organization would like to sponsor a series of these podcasts, again, just email me, Rabbi Address at jewishsacredaging.com. Seekers of Meaning is recorded at the Electronic Genius Studios of Lubetkin Media. And a big shout out to our producer, Steve Lubetkin, who is the guru of all electronic things. Thank you very much, Steve. To all of you, until we see each other on the next Seekers of Meaning, take care of yourself. Please stay healthy. And most of all, as Judith reminded us, be kind to one another. Shalom, lehitraot.